Daniel Brooks knew something was wrong before he even opened the envelope. The paper felt heavier than it should. Inside was a single sheet from his steel supplier. Price adjustment, effective immediately. No warning, no gradual change, just numbers that made his stomach drop. The cost of the steel he needed every week had jumped overnight, not by a few percent, by enough to wipe out his profit on his biggest contract. Daniel stood in the middle of his small office in Dayton, Ohio, staring at the page. 40 employees depended on this place. His grandfather started the factory after World War II. His father expanded it. Now it was Daniel's turn, and one letter had just changed everything. He picked up the phone and called the supplier. The man on the other end sounded tired. "It's the tariffs," he said. "If you like stories where big political decisions crash into real lives in ways no one expects, subscribe to Fiscora Empire, because sometimes the most powerful economic battles aren't fought in stock markets. They hit factory floors like this one." Daniel hung up and walked through the plant. Machines hummed, sparks flew. Workers joked with each other. No one knew their costs just exploded. That night, he turned on the news. The word was everywhere: tariffs. The government had placed new taxes on imported steel and other goods. The message was loud: protect American jobs, punish foreign competition, bring manufacturing home. Daniel wanted to believe it. But his steel didn't come from overseas. He bought from a domestic distributor, so why did his price jump too? The next morning, he got another shock. His main customer called. "We need to talk about pricing," they said. Daniel already knew what that meant. If he raised his prices, they might leave. If he didn't, he lost money. Either way, he paid. He sat at his desk and did the math again and again. There was no version where this worked. That's when he called an old college friend named Mark. Mark worked in Washington now. Trade policy numbers. Analysis. Daniel trusted him. "Tariffs are supposed to help us," Daniel said. Mark was quiet for a moment. "Help who?" he asked. That question stuck. Daniel started looking around. Domestic steel producers had also raised prices. They didn't need to compete with cheaper imports anymore. The wall went up. Prices inside the wall rose. Daniel wasn't protected. He was trapped. Weeks passed. Costs climbed in other areas too. Truck shipping got more expensive. Parts from suppliers rose in price. Even packaging costs increased. Everything touched by global trade moved. His bank called next. "Sector risk is rising," they said. His loan interest rate might adjust. Tariffs didn't just hit materials, they hit credit. Daniel began noticing something strange. Big manufacturing corporations were reporting higher profits. Their stock prices went up after tariff announcements. While he was panicking, they were celebrating. That made no sense. So Daniel drove to Washington to meet Mark. They sat in a small coffee shop near the Capitol. Mark slid a folder across the table. Inside were charts, lobbying records, exemption lists, company earnings reports. "Look here," Mark said. Some companies had pushed hard for tariffs. Then they applied for exemptions on specific materials they needed. They avoided the worst costs. Smaller firms didn't. Daniel flipped through the pages. "Wait," he said, "so they get protection from foreign competition and relief from the tariffs." Mark nodded. "They have lawyers, lobbyists, and connections." Daniel leaned back. "So this isn't just about countries fighting." "No," Mark said. "It's about power shifting inside the country." Daniel thought about his workers, about families, about mortgages. None of them had lobbyists. Back home, he got an email from an investment firm. They wanted to discuss strategic opportunities during trade volatility. Daniel read between the lines. They wanted to buy him, cheap. While he was squeezed, he deleted the email. But more came. Other small factory owners he knew got similar offers. Maria, who ran a plant in Indiana, called him one night. "They cut my orders," she said. "Then someone offered to buy us." Daniel started to see a pattern. Tariffs, raised costs, pressure built. Small firms weakened. Investors circled. Big corporations grew. He went back to Mark. "Who benefits from fewer independent businesses?" Daniel asked. Mark didn't answer directly. "Whoever has the scale to survive the storm." Daniel looked out the cafe window at the Capitol Dome. He used to think trade policy was about borders. Now it looked like something else, a filter, one that decided who could breathe under pressure and who couldn't. Back at the factory, another order was canceled. A customer moved to a larger supplier who could manage the new cost structure. Daniel stared at the empty production line that should have been running. His grandfather survived recessions, oil crises, foreign competition. But this felt different. This pressure wasn't visible. It came through emails, invoices, interest rate letters, invisible weight. He walked outside into the cold evening air. He looked at the lights inside the factory, and for the first time, he wondered something he never had before. If tariffs were supposed to build American strength, why did it feel like his world was shrinking, and who was getting bigger? Daniel stopped sleeping through the night. He woke at 3 a.m. with numbers running through his head. Steel up, shipping up, interest up, orders down. He started tracking everything on a whiteboard in his office. Every new cost increase felt like another weight tied to his legs. He called Maria again. She sounded defeated. "They cut our credit line," she said. "Bank says the industry is unstable." Daniel felt the same pressure building. Then something strange happened. One of his largest competitors, a massive corporation, announced record quarterly profits. Their CEO went on television. He talked about strong pricing power in a disciplined market. Daniel replayed that line 3 times. Disciplined market. It sounded clean, professional, but he knew what it meant. Less competition, more control. He drove to meet Mark again. This time, Mark looked more serious. "I shouldn't be showing you this," he said, handing over another set of papers. They were lists of tariff exemptions. Company names, product codes, approval dates. Daniel scanned the list. His competitor's name appeared over and over. Approved, approved, approved. They got relief on the materials they need, Daniel said. "Yes," Mark replied, "but their smaller rivals didn't." Daniel felt anger rise, so they can keep costs low while everyone else's rise. Mark nodded. "And they can raise prices anyway, because imports are blocked." Daniel leaned back. "That's not protection, that's consolidation." Mark didn't argue. Daniel started connecting dots. Large firms had global supply chains. If tariffs hit one source, they shifted to another. Small firms bought from whoever they could afford. No backup, no leverage. Then came the second shock. Daniel's insurance provider raised his premium. Economic uncertainty, the letter said. The pressure wasn't just one thing, it was everywhere. Layer after layer. He called Maria again. She was crying. "They laid off 10 people, she said. "My brother works here." The next day, she sent Daniel a copy of an offer. A multinational company wanted to buy her plant. Same language. Stability during trade disruption. Daniel realized this wasn't coincidence, it was timing. Stress weakened small businesses. Buyers appeared. "Cheap?" he called Mark one more time. "I need to understand something," Daniel said. "Is this the plan?" Mark sighed. Officially, tariffs are about trade. Unofficially, they change who has power in the market. Daniel sat in silence. "Do policymakers see this?" "Some do," Mark said. "Some benefit from it." Daniel looked at his whiteboard. Costs rising like a staircase. Then he saw something that changed everything. One of the corporations gaining from tariffs also owned investment funds. Those funds were buying struggling manufacturers. The same firms raising prices were financing the takeover of those being squeezed. A cycle. Daniel felt a chill. This wasn't just survival, it was acquisition. Pressure wasn't an accident. It was an environment, one where only the biggest could breathe. He drove to Maria's town. Her factory floor was half empty, machines silent, workers gone. She signed the sale papers that afternoon. Daniel watched as history disappeared. Her father started that place. Now it belonged to a corporation headquartered stayed away. The brand stayed, the jobs didn't. On the drive home, Daniel understood something new. Tariffs were not just walls between countries. They were walls inside the economy. And walls change who controls what's inside. He pulled into his parking lot. The factory lights glowed for now, but he knew the pressure wasn't stopping. The question was no longer how to survive. It was this: if enough small businesses fall, who owns the country's industries when the dust settles? Daniel stood on the factory floor before sunrise. The machines were quiet. He walked past workstations his grandfather installed decades ago. He touched the metal of one machine like it might disappear. The pressure hadn't eased. Another supplier raised prices. Another customer delayed orders. Another letter from the bank arrived. Review of credit exposure. Daniel finally gathered his workers. He told them the truth. Costs were rising faster than sales. They might need shorter weeks. No one yelled. That made it worse. They just nodded. They had families, bills, mortgages. Later that day, Daniel met Mark one last time. They sat in a park away from offices. Daniel had one question. "Is this just bad luck?" he asked. "Or is the system built this way?" Mark took a long breath. "Policies like tariffs are sold as protection," he said. "But pressure always reveals structure." Daniel listened. "When costs rise suddenly," Mark continued, "who survives?" "Those with scale," Daniel said. "Those with access," Mark added. Daniel thought of the exemption lists, the lobbyists, the legal teams, the investors. Small businesses didn't have those. Large corporations did. "So tariffs don't just block imports," Daniel said slowly. "They rearrange the inside." Mark nodded, like shaking a box. What settles at the bottom? The small pieces. Daniel felt the weight of it. An empire isn't always built by expanding outward. Sometimes it's built by absorbing inward. Maria's factory was gone. Others were next. Each closure made the remaining giants stronger. Less competition, more pricing power, more influence. Daniel drove back and looked at his town. Shops, schools, homes, all tied to local jobs. If factories closed, everything shrank. He saw the bigger picture now. Tariffs created stress. Stress forced decisions. Sell, merge, close. The result wasn't just higher prices. It was ownership changing hands, power concentrating. This wasn't a headline story. It was a slow shift, quiet, structural, and it didn't stop with steel. The same pattern appeared in other industries: electronics, machinery, consumer goods. Everywhere supply chains tightened, pressure moved. Those with flexibility survived. Those without got absorbed. Daniel stood outside his factory at sunset. He thought about his grandfather again. Back then, competition was foreign companies. Now the battle felt closer. Inside, he realized something. Trade wars aren't only country versus country, they're also filters. And filters decide who remains after the strain. Today, it was tariffs. Tomorrow, it could be sanctions, trade bans, regulations. Each shock reshapes the system. Each wave concentrates control. That's the hidden cost. Not just higher prices, but fewer independent players, more centralized power, less local control. Daniel looked at his building. He didn't know how long he could hold on, but he understood the battlefield now. If this story made you see trade policy differently, share your thoughts below. Do tariffs protect or concentrate? And share this with someone who thinks economic policy stays in Washington. Because for people like Daniel, it walks right through the factory door. Stay with Fiscora Empire. We follow the money behind power.